Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ainam Namaskritya Shaiva Divyam Saraswatyam Vyasam Sojan Mastapreshu Bhadreshu Bhagavati Sevaya Uttamastu Bhagavati Naistiki. So, reading all the verses of the first chapter.
In this particular time body, following two steps. This way, also.
In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with the material mind and senses according to his fruitive activities. When the reaction of his particular activity comes to an end, that end is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth.
When the eyes lose their power to see color or form due to morbid affliction of the optic nerve, the sense of sight becomes deadened. The living entity who is the seer of both the eyes and the sight loses his power of vision. In the same way, when the physical body, the place where perception of objects occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving, that is known as death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth.
Therefore, one should not view death with honor, nor have recourse to defining the body as a soul, nor give way to the exaggeration showing the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment, steadfast in purpose.
Proud with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusionary world through his reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world.
Smanakaria Santraso Karvanyam Asam Sambrama Vajiva Katiro Nasangaschare Diha Smanakaria Santraso Karvanyam Nasambrama Udvajiva Katiro Nasangaschare Diha Asmanakarya Santraso Karmanyam Nasam Samramaha Udvajiva Katiro Tasangashcharetha.
Anakara Santrasu
Tasmanakaya Santraso.
Kampanya Sambrama
Nakarvanya Nasambra.
Iro
Purvajiva Gatira.
Sangasari Iha
Tasangashcharetha.
Tasmanakarya Santraso
Tasmanakaya Santraso.
Nakarpanya Nasambrama
Nakarvanya Nasambrama. Purvajiva Gatira.
Tasangashcharedha
Tasangashcharetha. Tasmanakaya Santraso. Nakarvanya Nasambrama. Purvajiva Gatira. Tasangashcharetha. Tasmat Kathana death. Now, Karya should be done. Santrasa or not, Karpanya, not, Sampramaha, eagerness for material gain. Rudava, realizing Jivagatim, the true nature of the living entity. Dhira, steadfast. Sangha, free from attachment. One shot of Iha and his one. See the translation. Therefore, one should not be dead with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration, enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of living entity, one should move about free from attachment, steadfast. A sane person who has understood the philosophy of life and death is very upset upon hearing of the horrible, hellish condition of life in the womb of the mother or outside of the mother. For one has to make a solution to the problems of life. A sane man should understand the miserable condition of this material body. Without being unnecessarily upset, he should try to find out if there is a remedy. The remedial measures can be understood when one associates with persons who are liberated. It must be understood who is actually liberated. A liberated person is described in Bhagavad Gita, one who engages in uninterrupted devotional service to the Lord. Having surpassed the stringent laws of material nature, is understood to be situated in Brahman.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond the material creation. It is admitted even by impersonalists like Sankaracharya that Narayan is transcendental to this material creation. As such, when one actually engages in the service of the Lord in various forms, either Narayan or Radhakrishna or Sita Ram, he is understood to be on the platform of liberation. The Bhagavatam also confirms that liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position. Since a living entity is eternally the servitor of the Lord, when one seriously and sincerely engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is situated in the position of liberation. One should try to associate with a liberated person, and then the problems of life, namely birth and death, can be solved.
While discharging devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, one should not be miserly. He should not unnecessarily show that he has renounced this world. Actually, renunciation is not possible. If one renounces his palatial building and goes to a forest, there is actually no renunciation, for the palatial building is a property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. and the forest is also the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If he changes from one property to another, that does not mean that he renounces. He was never the proprietor of either the palace or the forest. Renunciation necessitates renouncing the false understanding that one can lord it over material nature. When one renounces this false attitude and renounces the puffed up position that he is also God, that is real renunciation. Otherwise, there is no meaning of renunciation. Rupa Goswami advises that if one renounces anything which could be applied in the service of the Lord and does not use it for that purpose, that is called Falgu Vairagya, insufficient or false renunciation. Everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. Nothing should be used for one's sense gratification. That is real renunciation. Nor should one unnecessarily increase the necessities of the body. We should be satisfied with whatever is offered and supplied by Krishna, without much personal endeavor. We should spend our time executing devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That is the solution to the problem of life and death.
Let's read the translation of it. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body and soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world, free from attachment and steadfast purpose. So, in this purport and next one, and kind of some of the other ones that you read, the courses, there's a theme of life. If you see it from there are three kind of people in the world. So you have your pessimistic people, it sees the glass half empty, and you have your optimistic, see the glass half full, and then there are realistic, see the glass half empty and the glass half full. So the verse talks about being pessimistic towards the material world, realizing that the material world is full of risk. Won't really be able to be happy here. This is not where the soul is meant to be. The soul is caged in this material body, and so the material world is temporary. And so when you have the eternal soul trying to reside in the material world, right, the soul, or we won't be happy. And we have felt that in ways, throughout our life. I'm sure we all have had some kind of experiences where we had those kind of realizations. So, but just being pessimistic in the material world can lead to two scenarios, right? The one scenario of the negative scenario, as we see among people, is if you're just pessimistic in the material world and seeing all the negativity around you, having bad experiences, not with relationships, not getting reciprocation in the world, having failures, all these things can lead to people getting depressed, right? And we see that around us. So if you have just pessimism in the material world, that can cause to depression, and even in like some extreme cases, suicide. They're just so unhappy and they cannot fathom what's missing, right? They try all the possible ways that are given within the material realm and are not able to feel that happiness that the soul is looking for, and decide to commit suicide. That's kind of the extreme, right? Or if you start being pessimistic about this material world, then that can lead to the second possibility of that is that you start seeking spiritual life, right? You start seeking that there must be something higher, right? And that's how, like that's one of the ways of the four that people approach Krishna, right? Or people approach God. It's because they're um, so miserable or they're having such a hard time in the material world that that's how they approach, and they're trying to see that there must be something higher, and that's when they start um, that begins their spiritual life. The second is so that's the pessimist, being really pessimistic to the world. The kind of the opposite side of that is being really optimistic about the material, right? That's also being born in this world, right? So where that's kind of the selling of the big American dream, right? Like whatever you want to do, you can make it happen. You're just persistent, and kind of hearing the stories of people who came from rag to riches or not having anything to be able to be really successful in their life in so many different paths, whether that be sports, like technology, media, like all of those things, right? And you're being told that, hey, that can be your story, right? And so, but being being optimistic material world, right? There is some tiny happiness, right? But it's really small. So it's like soul like this, but there may be like this much, right? And it's really limited. And we see the examples of people who have kind of accomplished that, right? Still not being happy. Um, I was having this conversation yesterday with Kelly talking about the purport, and she was saying, yeah, there's this singer Moby. Does anyone have this Moby? Probably some really famous singer in the 2000s, and he won a Grammy Award, and he was doing really well in his career, and was doing well financially and in his art, and then got this Grammy Award, went to his penthouse in New York, and he was thinking about like committing suicide because he wasn't feeling that happiness, right? Like when you hear, okay, like when you get to the top, that's really where you'll feel that happiness, what this is what you need to do, and then getting there and not really being able to feel that, right? So that's thankfully like, he didn't do that, and now like he's trying to serve others and kind of realizing that that's what kind of um, is the way to be happy is by serving. So that's the second part of it, right? Being really optimistic in the material world, you may have limited happiness and it will be short lived, and that also leads to finally leads to unhappiness. Trying to figure out, well, this is what was sold to me all my life. Here I am, and this is still not the solution. Okay? So whatever I was told throughout my life is not really the solution. So that's the optimism in the material world. So then third comes the being realistic, right? So what being realistic means is to be pessimistic for the material world and being optimistic in your spiritual life. And so what I wanted to spend um, towards the next few minutes is to talk about how we can be enthusiastic and optimistic for our spiritual life, right? Thinking about like talking and discussing some practical ways where we can do that, right? But first, what we don't want to do is to get unenthusiastic or to the extreme to even like try to leave spiritual life because of certain reasons, right? So what I want to start with is go around and think about ways that may make someone unenthusiastic about practicing spiritual life, right? And then how can we avoid those ways, or what can be the remedies, right? As Prabhupada is saying, a sane person, just doesn't like complain, but find remedies. So what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen? So if any one of you would like to share the ways that we can get unenthusiastic about spiritual life and how to avoid them.
I would say we get unenthusiastic by not having the right relationships, and we become enthusiastic when we have the right relationships.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, having having important relationships is really important, right? So people here and mentors in spiritual life is really sure that you have those good relationships.
Um, when you feel that you're part of something that's like disorganized, it curbs your enthusiasm because we feel more inclined when something's efficient. It protects our enthusiasm. So we feel that our efforts will be worth it. Yeah, not that that happens at Krishna House. I just mean like if I was just thinking about things that would curb my enthusiasm. If I was part of a project and I thought like this is so like not doing this right, that would
Yeah.
be good.
Whenever we first come to Krishna consciousness and we got to give up some of our maybe things that we were doing before or some behavior patterns or something like that. So that can be at first a little unenthusiastic, but then replacing them with better behavior patterns and better things to occupy our time can actually help us to become enthusiastic.
Taking things too personal because a lot of people got a lot of bad attitudes and actions. They might be projected towards you, but you can't take them on as personal. I feel like it makes it hard to do service.
Yeah, I mean, we're Prabhupada has made such a beautiful and big society, right? We have all kind of people in the society, so there may be people that we won't gel with, right? Because of our nature, our upbringing, our the way we kind of see things, and so it's important to have that realization. And as I was saying earlier, the first thing was like having those relationships, but then also kind of avoiding the relationships that will make us unenthusiastic about our spiritual life. So kind of that.
I found it really funny that we're going over this topic today because I feel like Krishna intentionally woke me up today to be very pessimistic. And I was just like sitting here and I don't know, I didn't really want to speak, but being pessimistic about detachment and detaching from the people you love, detaching from the ideas that we don't need friendships because they're also materialistic attachments. Just detaching from everything kind of gets to a point where um, you ask Krishna, well, then what am I here for? And who do you want me attached to? And attached to Krishna, but then again, it kind of like makes the material world feel very like pointless and sad. So yeah, that's how it'll go today.
Hopefully that changes. Anyone else?
Feeling judged or defined by mistakes. And I guess the remedy to that would just like giving second chances and like passionately like lifting people up. Like it's okay, like brush it off. Krishna loves you. Okay.
Yeah, that's yeah. especially when you're earlier in your spiritual life, having that kind of experiences can be really hard for your spiritual life. So that's why, again, it's really important, like, who surround us with it. And then also, as you were saying, like, we can always try to um, show that behavior towards others, right? So um, we can model ourselves to do that, so that way others kind of watch that too. What's that saying where like judge a fish by how times a tree or something like that? You always think like fishes cannot do anything or something like that. That type of thing, right? So like we all have our talents and we all have things that we're not good at, right? So if we just continue to see someone on things they're not good at and judge them.
Regarding marriage, sometimes it was being lost and somebody said, well, I don't have time. And my comment, the preface to my comment is it's helpful is to realize the urgency and importance. It says, he's often asked, well, I don't have time to read it. Sure, I don't have time. He says, the problem is it's not about you don't have time. The problem is you don't realize the urgency and importance of this. So it says, anything that you think is important, you're going to find time. You're going to find time for high school, movies, because you think it's important. And the urgency and realization of our true position is the story with Nardin Maharaj when he was younger. Somebody accused him of guys are all pessimistic and were escapers from society, just trying to escape. And he asked the person, okay, if the building is on fire, I'm running away, am I doing the right thing? He's like, yes. He said, thank you.
Yeah, so I think where the words talks in the array was steadfast in purpose, right? So realizing like what the purpose is and then the urgency of the purpose and kind of that way. Anyone else? Just gonna take a list that I thought of. Let's see if we address um else.
I also find it when I'm in a where I'm noticing everything everyone's doing wrong, uh, I'm not super connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be weird. Just be like some days out of nowhere, just decide to look at everything.
Yeah. When you're starting to seek faults in others, it's a barometer to where it can tell you, right, like something internally is wrong, or like you're not happy, not satisfied, to where that's why you're kind of projecting that to others. So, one that I thought of was um, if we are not reading from the Shastras, if we're not hearing from others, and then without doing that, trying to follow the four regulated principles, that can be really hard and can be unenthusiastic, right? Because we're not. It can get to the point where it just becomes a routine, right? Or we're trying, or chanting our japa, and we um, we just start seeing it as kind of a thing that I do, and we're not putting the time and the effort of reading and hearing from others that kind of motivates us to continue to practice our spiritual life. So if we don't do that, that can cause like finding the regulated principles hard to follow, or chanting our rounds hard to follow, and getting unenthusiastic towards our spiritual life. So making sure that, as Prabhu was saying, seeing the urgency of it and hearing it, so that we can actually follow the four regulated principles and chanting enthusiastically. Another one that I thought of is actually this one that we tend to see a lot is trying to be too austere in spiritual life. Okay? Like somehow, because of so much of like the pessimism around the material world, we can magnify that, and we can overdo on like being austere and leaving the material world, right? That's kind of the example where Prabhupada was giving, right? Like the person leaving the palace and going to the forest, but not what's the difference? Like, that's kind of the take renunciation or not right renunciation, because the real realization is, whether I'm here or I'm in a palace or I'm in a forest, it's all being provided by Krishna. And the way I'll be able to be happy is to see how I can use this in Krishna service. Right? Prabhupada is such a wonderful example of that. You can see throughout his lifetime, wherever he was in his life, um, he was using the resources that he had, material resources that he had, to serve Krishna. So, not to see austerity as a parameter for our spirituality. Right? Just because you're more austere doesn't mean that more austere you get doesn't mean the closer you're getting to Krishna. So not taking that as a parameter, but again, realizing what the purpose is, right? The purpose is to serve Krishna, right? And then that should be our focus, not, or whatever austerity we need to take to be able to do that service, we should be able to take that, right? Or we should take that happily, or try to do that, but not just take austerity because that's something that actually the negative impact would be of my false ego, or get me unenthusiastic. Right? So let's kind of talk about now what we can do, right? Those are the things that we should avoid. How we can, what are things that we can do, the positive things that will make us continue to be enthusiastic towards our spiritual life. Shadam, yeah, that's the good and easy one, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, such a beautiful thing. Like Prabhupada has given us like so practical um, and wonderful, simple things that we can just do and have like these wonderful spiritual experiences, right? And one of them is prashadam, where we just, take these boga and food that we have and cook it to where we're cooking with the meditation of two, that we're doing this for Krishna and then offer it to Krishna. And it's so simple, and I could see my kids doing it, and they just get so enthusiastic about like taking the little plate to Krishna's altar, then bringing it back like Krishna ate it. And so yeah, so that's definitely something I'll be so enthusiastic about. Anything else?
Having a good understanding of what unmet needs you have. Yeah, said that. Meeting, like knowing what your needs are and what needs that you have that are unmet. Figuring out how to meet those needs.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you say that, the thought that comes to my mind, and what I had thought about was, we all have certain nature, right? And so making sure that our nature aligns with the service that we're doing for the long-term happiness, right? Because if we don't have that alignment, we'll get unenthusiastic. So to stay enthusiastic, have that service that really motivates us, right? Whether that be deity worship, book distribution, sharing Krishna consciousness, giving classes, whatever that may be. If we really understand our nature, and again, we can kind of approach our mentors, we can try things, but when there's that kind of that good match, that's what continue us to stay enthusiastic towards our
cultivating humility always helps build more connection. I wish I knew how. Some of the moments that I really
Yeah. Hmm. I think like one way to do it, or one way that I kind of experience it is positively to be able to do that is try to, be grateful and have that gratitude. Right? That kind of just puts you kind of in that lower position. It's like you have gratitude towards your gratitude to God and realizing if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be. So that just automatically kind of cultivates that because we can see that it's not because of me, it's because of a lot of these other points, because of Shiva Prabhupada, because of Krishna, that it's all being that it's happening. So that's one way that I have experienced that is to try to be grateful and have that gratitude.
I was thinking, when I feel spiritually discouraged, sometimes changing the environment or like going to a retreat, being in a different setting with devotees is really helpful. And yeah, that's really helped me.
That's a great practical advice, right? Like get that spiritual recharge, kind of get away from routine and go somewhere where the focus is just you're focusing on spiritual life, spending more time reading, chanting, and everyone else around you is doing that. That will inspires you or gives you that recharge or that boost. So the the one that I thought of is sharing Krishna consciousness with others. I think particularly and I experience like um, that when we share Krishna consciousness with others, it keeps our spirituality, our Krishna consciousness fresh. Because we are able to see from like their perspective, and when you introduce someone to that, and you can kind of see how enthusiastic they are, like how positive impact that it has on someone's life. Um, it's a wonderful way to see how the process that is being given to us works wonderfully. So you get in um, that gratitude and that enthusiasm. With our practicing, that just that the whole thing about like just talking about that for 30 minutes, just we felt like so happy and enlivened by having that conversation. So sharing Krishna consciousness with others um, definitely keeps it like new and fresh and gives you that um, enthusiasm to keep going. Um, the other one that I um, had was the following the order of the spiritual master. Right? Like if you can, when you have that conversation, getting those instructions from your um, spiritual master can give you that obviously like our the verse talks about the purpose, right, which is to build that relationship with Krishna, right, to get closer to Krishna, and the process is bhakti and the goal is bhakti, so we continue to do that. But then when we are able to get those specific instructions, right, the the spiritual master really understands us well and is able to provide us that specific instruction that will help us to continue to get closer to Krishna, then there's a lot of, then the mercy comes to that. And we're able to experience that enthusiasm in our spiritual life because we're working towards that purpose, right? So a lot of times, like, if I just get like bit by an ant, or if I just get, like a needle stuck, or some sandspur in my feet, it's just annoying, right? Like that pain is really annoying. It's like, why am I going through this pain? But when you actually, like getting a shot, right? You're going through that same needle pain, but it's actually you're like, okay, like this is for whatever the reason, or so the point I'm trying to make is if the pain is endured because of a higher purpose, then it's actually, not that painful, and it can also be, in certain cases, it can like be actually sweet. And so when we have that purpose, um, it the things will continue to come in, will continue to happen in the show, right? Like that's just part of it. That's just what we are. So that's not going to stop, right? So if we think we're getting to be one of the things that that I see, like when we take spiritual life in the beginning, or when we take Krishna consciousness, we expect like, oh, now like my life is just all happy, for the rest of the life. That definitely doesn't happen, right? It's because we're just in this material world, right? And that's just the nature of it. So that's not going to change. But then when we are steadfast in our purpose and we really know what the purpose is, then we can endure that pain, and actually, get to the point where we start seeing that as Krishna's mercy, as seeing those are experiences that are bringing me closer to Krishna. And then you can actually even start being grateful for those experiences. So in the time it will be hard, like no doubt, right? But then once you're kind of past it a little bit, then you'll be able to have that gratitude, um, and see that as Krishna's mercy, and be grateful for those experiences. So, any thoughts or questions?
Want to add something else towards your question with to inspire it, Krishna consciousness and Chaitanya Charan, not the from Mumbai, but it's an initiating guru in Russia. And he tells a story about his wife, who are very great devotee, but she was feeling very down. And at the same time, he was writing a book, and the book was called How I Came to Krishna Consciousness. And he wasn't really writing it, but he was collecting stories from devotees through Soviet Union, the story how they came to Krishna Consciousness. And the life in the Soviet Union, post-Soviet Union, it's what people go through, the craziest life stories, and how Krishna eventually brings them to them. And so he compiled the book and he gave it. And he said, within a few days, he was flying. He said, when we read those stories, it's just some people got the book from their drug dealer, found a trash can. Somebody was a mobster who got the book. It was crazy story. Yeah. He says, he wakes up the dead start walking. So one of the things we can do is just hear stories of devotees and read those books and see what they go through, what devotees go through. And this really gives us this deep taste and faith.
Yeah, that's a really, like hearing stories of how Krishna does magic in everyone's life is really inspiring. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah. I was thinking about proper pronunciation. I was thinking recent. You see the Kim K putting flowers on Prabhupada. You see that? Yeah, crazy. And I was thinking about Rasika told me this, that like Jay Shetty at one point, Kim K's life coach or something, um, wanted to just take brahmachari, and like he was tired of dealing with famous people. But Radhanath was how that's pronunciation, and things like, oh, like I need to renounce my job and go as a brahmachari, a temple far, far away, and just do my like. But no, like the Lord wants us to reach over, and He's had more of an impact than just a brahmachari. Yeah, so I find that very inspiring. And then the second comment is that we should have this pessimism about the material world. But how does that cultivate gratitude, which is good for our creeper? Which is there another word?
That's the one that I remember. Bhakti, Bhakti, the major seed of Bhakti. So the question was like how to develop gratitude by just provide pessimism around.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the way I have personally experienced that in my life, okay, is when you see so much suffering around you, you you see like these um, like you see that they don't really. So like um, a few days ago, I went to I wanted my dad needed a laptop, so I wanted to get like a laptop for his marketplace. So I met this person to pick up the laptop morning, and I went to her place. It was like 9:30 in the morning. She was like um, barely functional, and she called me in her house to get the laptop. The house smelled of smoke, and um, she was barely like functional, and she had this shirt on that kind of showed that she worked at a bar. I was like, "But late nights?" She's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Yeah, I haven't slept." And so and you can see kind of her life is just like um, I was feeling that like it's just like she's trying to just make the ends meet. There's just so much misery, and that's like a lot of people around that we see that um, are just struggling like that. And when you see that, in my experience, that has helped me to again be grateful for what I have. Like it could have been easily me trying to um, find happiness through drugs, through intoxications, through all the other means. But somehow, because of the mercy of the devotees, Srila Prabhupada, Krishna, that like, I'm not going on that path, right? Like somehow I could just be like, all right, like I'm done with this, like this is not gonna work for me. And um I can step away from it. So that kind of has helped me to be grateful. Being, so it's like being not like seeing that pessimism or seeing, this material world is not really a long, it's not, as Prabhupada would say, this material world is not a place for ladies and gentlemen. You can see that like over and over and over on a daily basis. And so it's like, there's no point of me even trying. It's not worth it. And so, and then, seeing somehow all the blessings that I have, and I'm not suffering, that's kind of what like has been my experience. I don't know.
But pessimism means put our faith in material happiness. And optimism means I put faith in Krishna.
Does that answer your question?
We're pessimistic in the sense that happiness from material things. So then we can still have gratitude for what we get. Look at something and spiritually see it as kind of we still have
but not out like hiding. Yeah, pessimism kind of from the overall. And also, when something does happen, actually, yeah, something does go crazy and wrong, and devotees can have that, you're like, well, it's gonna go well, like, what else do you expect?
Right.
So, not be overly bothered by it. Just be happy with it, because I have what I have, and this is, although whatever happens, like, kind of unexpected, but at the same time, expected. It's just the nature of this world. But in that sense, like, what still some gratitude is going.
Yeah, it's like, having a thunderstorm still inside the town. Like, feel that shelter. Then you see that around you, that storm always happening, that shelter, gratitude, to shelter. Any other questions? Yes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.